What did that one teacher do to you that you'll never forget? I faked my way through 4th and 5th grade math. I never understood how to do long division, but managed to hide that from the teachers and answer test questions by reverse multiplication. Basically get a number and multiply it out and see how close I would get. And keep doing until I got the answer. My 6th grade math teacher figured out that I was faking and had no idea how to actually divide anything. She had me come in one afternoon to help with cleaning the erasers. All the kids fought for this privilege, so I was thrilled. Sat me down and tutored me until I grasped the concept. Bless you. MRS. Gillespie. Basically get a number and multiply it out and see how close I would get. And keep doing until I got the answer. My physics teacher in high school hosted an annual trip to Walt Disney World in Orlando for 15-20 kids for over a week. I was one of the better and most interested students in his class. He was an incredible teacher who found examples in physics everywhere. He also used to work for Disney prior to teaching. Since my family was not so well off and I could not afford the trip to Walt Disney World, I declined when he asked me if I was going to join. He probed a bit and he somehow found the funds to have me join without me even inquiring. I don't know if he pulled school money or there was a surplus. But either way, that was one of my best memories from that school. I still keep in touch with him 15 years later. Made us make paper cranes for hall passes. In high school, one of my teachers had this duck bill whistle, literally shaped like a duck's bill, and it made a quacking noise. She used it to get the class attention. One time I guess we were being extra rowdy and she blew the ever-loving shit out of it and the class went stone dead quiet. She got this shocked look on her face, and then took her hairpin out and dropped it, and the whole class heard it hit the ground, and she got this big grin on her face and we all just busted out laughing. My band teacher drove me home several times after the 7 p.m. jazz band practice. My dad was supposed to pick me up, but several times he fell asleep and didn't answer the phone when I tried to call. The professor I had for my Calculus 100 class in university was awesome. He was a good teacher and funny and engaging. If it was a first year class with over 100 people in it, I was just a face in a big crowd. I was on campus after hours a couple years after I graduated. They run programs for kids in the evenings and was dropping off my oldest, and I saw him. He stopped, looked at me hard, and said, "First name, last name." Not a bad student. Not great, but definitely not bad. And kept walking. This was a good 6 years after I graduated. Absolutely amazed he would have remembered me at all after teaching how many hundreds of students in between. That is just crazy. 3rd grade Mrs. Jones. My dad had just deserted us and we were suddenly destitute. She bought my school pictures for us and paid my lunch bill all year. She never said a word about it. Only found out later. Told me I was smart and could succeed. I had spent the past couple years at a private school, trying so hard to prove myself. Despite doing well academically, I didn't fit their cookie cutter mold. So I was looked down on by other students and administration. When I told the guidance counselor that I wanted to be pre-med and go to medical school after college, she pretty much told to lower my expectations because I wouldn't succeed. At the end of my college math class my senior year of high school, I ended up in my professor's office to look at what I had missed on my final. He told me that I had done well, and that I could my PhD in math if I wanted. That was not what I wanted to do. But when I told him I wanted to be pre-med, he looked at me and said, "You're going to well in that. I know you will succeed." 6 years later and I'm halfway through my 2nd year of medical school, and his words still ring in my mind. In my senior year, my English teacher asked me if I was manic depressive after turning in a personal essay. Had the police come to the school because he had reason to believe I was smoking cigarettes and using drugs in 7th grade? No. Both of my parents smoked in the house. I didn't even know I smelled like cigarettes until the police told me why they were searching my backpack, desk and locker. He knew my home life wasn't the best. He saw a bright kid but someone who struggled with just, following orders. He rode home as I was failing and spoke more kindly about me than most had ever done. My re-teacher tried to keep me behind for no reason. I'm a complete goody two shoes and he gave me my first ever detention for asking my friend about what textbook page we were reading after coming to class late following an appointment. The guy tried to make me pick bits of paper and rubber bands off the floor as he watched me do it. I walked out. With zero consequences. When I was in 7th grade there was a teacher at my school that was essentially a love child of Santa and an elf. Dude was 5 feet 2. Over 300 pounds. And had a beard that would put Jim Lee to shame. My first ever conversation with this man ended with him saying, "Now you go get yourself something to eat." Big man. He caught me so off guard. I didn't realize what he had said until after I walked away. Not me. My brother. He had one of those haircuts that was popular in the mid-90s where you have long fringe, maybe 5. But skinhead the rest. He was a skateboarder. Anyway. The woodshop teacher decided that the haircut was a health and safety hazard and swiftly cut his hair in front of the whole class, meanwhile berating him kids today etc. etc. My brother was 12 and came home from school crying. My father was less than pleased. And apparently went up to school and made a right kerfuffle, as he should. My mother was very embarrassed by it all. I'll never forget. Had a high school art teacher who would let me stay in his classroom during lunches. Always gave me half his sandwich and other extra food because he knew I didn't eat much otherwise. Edit. He would also keep a drawer in the classroom stocked with snacks so that I could swing by and grab something between classes if I needed. No. He never did anything questionable. And no. I never fell asleep after eating the sandwiches. He was just a kind person. I can't remember what I did, but in 1st grade my teacher got mad at me and said, "You wanna act like a baby? Fine, come over here." She made me sit in a corner on the floor and gave me 2 little toys to play with. That must have been nice. Dot. When I was in 3rd grade, the teacher of my gifted program class, extra class we were pulled from mainstream to do a few hours a week, started berating me over raising my hand too quickly to answer questions, saying I needed to think longer and give others the chance to answer. She went on and on about how I had an attitude. I got upset and she made me stand in front of the class when I started to cry. I know you're crying and I don't care. It was my birthday. It was a class of about 8 students. One guy told me in high school that day was one of his clearest memories from elementary school. Called my mum while she was at work to tell her I'd written one of the best things he'd ever seen as a teacher. Oh boy. Grade 3. I said AW. Crap. And I got tagged out. Rounding 2nd. During a game of soccer baseball, Canadian term for kickball. A little girl covering the base screamed "teacher." Negotiation failure said the C word. Dot. So I got put on detention and yelled for the rest of the day until I finally snapped on my teacher at the end of the day and said, "Listen teacher. I don't get it." All I said was "oh crap" when she caught the ball, and I didn't even know that was a swear word. The teacher replied, "Oh. I'm so sorry. I thought you said the other C word." I said, "What is the other C word?" She said, "Ask your mother." At the end of the day I got into the van and told my mom what happened. She broke out laughing her ass off and explained to me. When I asked that the word the teacher thought I had said was CNT. I went to school the next day and said to all my friends, "Hey guys. Guess what word I just learned?" I called somebody stupid once when they got a question wrong and the teacher instantly made me stand up and spell stupid backwards. Got it wrong with the pressure and learned a lesson that day. Learned a lesson that day. Memorize stupid backwards before calling someone else stupid. This teacher was extremely strict, hated by my class. But loved me because I was one of the few who respected her and did well in her class. When school ended, she gave me a crystal bear. Nothing too fancy or expensive. But I felt as if I was glowing leaving that classroom with bear in my hand. I still have it and will treasure it forever. I was anorexic when I was in school. She took me aside after class and told me that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing to myself I was going to die. That my body was going to start shutting down. My organs would fail. That it would not be beautiful and I was going to die an awful and painful death. I still catch myself slipping back into that mindset 10 years later sometimes. But I will never forget that. Senior year of high school. I was on the wrestling team and I had cut about 30 pounds that year. From 170 down to 140. I happened to have the same math teacher 3 years in a row, so we really got to know each other. First name basis and all that. She knew how much weight I cut for the season. I told her and it was obvious just from my face. I wasn't fat before my cut either. I had a six-pack. She had a strict no eating in class policy. That'll be important in a minute. The day after the wrestling season ends I walk into math class and sit down. She walks over to my desk and puts a whole apple pie right in front of me. She knew it was my favorite. Handed me a fork. And said she'll ignore the no eating rule for one day. I finished that whole pie in maybe 30 minutes. Linda. I'll never forget that. You absolutely made my day. She took every phone call no matter the time of night while I was in rehab. If it wasn't for her being there in my lowest time. I have always loved learning and loved going to school. I was a good kid and never really got into trouble. One year my parents got called in for a parent-teacher conference. One by one. Each of my teachers told my parents that I acted out during class. Was a distraction. Etc. This came as a surprise to my parents as I had never gotten in trouble. And my grades were always good. Finally. The conversation got to my history teacher and my science teacher. They were speechless. My history teacher told my parents that he wished he had a classroom full of students with a passion for learning like me, and that if the other teachers put in as much effort into teaching as I did into learning, then there would not be an issue. My science teacher agreed and apologized for wasting my parents' time. The rest of the school year was interesting. I could tell there was tension between certain groups of my teachers. My history teacher would later become the principal of that school. And I could not think of anyone more deserving of that role. Had 10 minutes to spare before lunch bell and he told us all to go jerk off or whatever it is you do. I don't know what he wanted to say and he apologized to us. But it was funny as hell. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Probably just a funny dude who let his real personality come through too much for the job. I had just gotten out of an emotionally abusive relationship around 16 and was worried about my ex hurting herself. Abuse really FCKS up your mind. So I confided in my English teacher. He listened to what I had to say and express. Then secretly got in touch with my parents, school administration, and her school's administration to make sure we were both okay. My parents told me about this about a year after graduation. I was really taken back by the fact that he did all of that to make sure we were okay. I'm Facebook friends with the teacher and want to buy him a beer once COVID is under control. I broke up with my boyfriend the night before my final, and as I was walking to class to take it, my teacher, seeing me, told me that I could take it the following day with his afternoon class without me even saying a word. He was a really great teacher. It was in my high school. My chemistry teacher. I was a bright student, especially in chemistry. When my grades went down, my parents only bashed me, whereas my sir understood it was due to my mental health issues and literally talked to me and calmed me down. It felt so good. I felt like somebody legit cared and understood me then. My family only cared about my grades, obviously. Edit. Okay, so English is not my first language. Really sorry for any mistakes I made. And as pointed out by a fellow redditor, I'm an Indian, so we address our teachers as sir or madam. Definitely did not think that through while typing it, lol. Also thanks for the silver kind stranger. There was a pretty old economy teacher who always talked about his fishing trips. who gave me an extra point for drawing a dead Kennedy's logo on my test. Then there was the history teacher who turned out to be a pedophile, who I had a whole conversation with about fur coats. Accidentally left paperwork on my desk that showed government grade projections based on family income, which meant I should have failed the class, knowing full well it would trigger me to make sure I got the best grade in the entire school year. Every other teacher told me how smart I was and how well I could do if I applied myself. My teacher told me she was proud of me and that I have my own opinions and that she hopes I succeed in the future. Freshman English teacher in college. He had a last name with 2 capital letters in it. So something like McConnor. On the top of one of my first papers I wrote McConnor and he told me that I spelled his name incorrectly. Now obviously this confused me because the spelling was indeed correct and it took a few minutes of back and forth confusion before he told me what I did wrong. Like a typical 18-year-old I kind of just shrugged it off. Like, EHH, who the FCK cares? Full stop. Full stop. Full stop. His response was essentially, if you don't care enough about your writing to get it correct, why the hell should somebody else care enough to read it? The response hit pretty close to home. Not initially of course because I was an 18-year-old schfed. But now, 15 years later, I still think about it from time to time and it does force me to put more effort into many of the things that I do. Called my handwriting a chicken shitty. I was never the same again. 5th grade. Teacher was shaking with anger because I put my math problems horizontally instead of vertically. Or something really stupid like that. She snapped at me for not being able to follow simple directions and humiliated me. When she went to look at the paper of the boy next to me, he said, I did it the same way. She smiled fondly and said, oh, Robert, as if she was amused. Erase parts of my answers for multiple tests to give me a 4 instead of 2. My computer science teacher would belittle me in front of other students and even ask me why I showed up for class. I hated his class and slowly just doing the work and failed the class because he made me believe I was dumb and incapable. I'm currently working in an MScs at a top 10 CS school and have plans to apply for PhD programs in CS next year. Got fired for setting up an illegal Guatemalan cattle market in the school basement. He made me write with my right hand. In choir class my teacher was trying to correct the pitch of what we were singing. But instead of saying pitch he said bitch. Which made the entire classroom erupt with laughter. Told me to stop dating my boyfriend when we were 13 because it's not like you're gonna marry him. We stayed together and got married. Out of spite? Wasn't so much what she did to for me as something she did with the entire class. 8th grade language arts class. She was a very cool person. Never looked at you with judgmental eyes. Treated everyone the same and with respect. And honestly, like equals to her. Anyways, the one thing that sticks out more than any other was the very first day of school. She made us all listen to a song. Didn't tell us why. Seemed kinda pointless and lame at the time. Last day of school. Played us the same song. Can't even describe how it felt. The school years always seemed to drag on and on. Could never wait for summer. But when she played the song at the end of the year, it kinda brought the whole year together. And made it seem like you had just walked in the door for the first time last week. I wish I could remember what song it was. I once got expelled for smoking weed at school when at the time I never even smoked it. I was 13 and started crying saying that I didn't smoke any weed. Since I was crying, my eyes got red and then the teacher and principal say just look how red your eyes are. You're ripped out of your mind. It got me kicked off our championship basketball team and everything. I'll never forgive those two for what they did to me and the stress they caused my single mother.